this video, I want to talk about this interesting foam thing sitting in front of me. Now, you young guys are not going to know what we're looking at here, but you old-timers who remember the 80s and 90s might remember what this might be, or the old RCers who've been around a while, like old DemonDriver here, and some of you old fogies, you might know what this thing is right here. Yeah, but basically this is the Carl Goldberg Mig-27 or Mig-23 target drone from the 1980s and 1990s, used by the U.S. Army and other various parts of the U.S. military, mainly Army ground and air defense forces, i.e. the Chaparral, the Vulcan, the Chaparral, and the Stinger missile system, 50 cal, tank-mounted M60 tank, the M1A, the M1B, different tanks, M2, and the Stinger, of course, Stinger shoulder-launched infrared-guided missile. This was the target. This was a target drone for that system. They made thousands of these things. Carl Goldberg Model Company injected, molded thousands of these things. And you would have an OS, an outboard OS, like a 120, 160 size motor up front, a puller motor up front in there. And you would have a flare system or a parachute system in here if the target wasn't shot down automatically. The operator could press a button, a chute would open up, sometimes the wing would fall off or something like that, but mainly it was designed to be shot down. So you'd have a flare system back in here, you'd have a flare, an infrared flare, and this would happen at night or daytime. This thing would be launched sometimes off the catapult. It would be launched, and there would be your Stinger, Stinger team, a spotter, and the actual shooter, and he would have the Stinger, and they would lock on an operator on top of a tank gunner, hatch open, he's got the 50 cal. This thing would fly in front, you'd have an operator, he would fire this thing would fly, 50, 60, 70 miles an hour. It would fly in front of anybody with a 50 cal, and they would open up with Maudus and turn this thing into pieces of foam on the ground. And, the U.S. government would buy thousands of OS or outboard gas or 120, 160 size glow motors. They'd have, all it was two stabilators, sometimes ailerons here right and left. Very simple, very basic, maybe 3 or 4 servos, no rudder, no landing gear. They would just launch it and go. And it was just very simple, very cost effective, and it taught gunners how to lead a target and shoot down a target, and these things were great for that. So in this video, what we're going to do is we are going to basically, we're going to take it apart, and I'm going to convert this plane, this MiG-23/MiG-27, the attack variant, into an EDF fighter jet. And I'm going to make the modifications and turn it into an EDF fighter jet with a 90 to 100 millimeter EDF, retracts, give it a nice paint scheme. I'm thinking maybe some African country that flew the, maybe Libyan, that'd be pretty cool. Model it after one of the Libyan MiG-23s that got shot down in the Gulf in the late 80s when the F-14s, I think 85, 86, when the 2 F-14s went up against the 2 Libyan MiG-23s and they shot them down. That was pretty cool. I think I'll honor those guys by making this a Libyan MiG-23 that got shot down. That'd be pretty cool, huh? All right, so let's get a little bit more of an in-depth look of our Goldberg Mig-27 target drone. Let's get a little bit more in depth. Let's take a closer look. All right, so let's get a little closer up here. So your OS 120 or 160 outboard glow motor would sit here. Right in here would be fuel tank, the servo to control the motor, and here's the throttle servo still in place. These are like hen's teeth if you can find these things, but I've heard from certain people that these things are still, they're in U.S. Army Department of Defense warehouses by the thousands. They still have tons of these things, and every once in a while the government will sell them in auctions and things like that. In here, let's take the wing off. Let's go ahead and have a look at this, get a little bit of a closer look here at the internal bay here. this was an area here that they could put fuel tanks, and obviously also a way to save on foam, lighten the weight. And then back in here you'd have either the recovery, drogue chute, a flare system maybe in here, something like that. And then you'd have various servos that would go back to control your ailerons and your stabilators for tail. And it's all removable. Everything is, you can take it all apart and disassemble everything. And that was the really cool thing about this. It's just very simple, very basic design, a very basic, simple, inexpensive, cost-effective target drone. Alright, so let's get some dimensions on this thing. Let's get an idea of how large it is. Alright, let's take a look at the wingspan. Alright, wingspan of this beast. Wingspan. Yeah, it's a decent size, about a 66 and a half, 67-inch wingspan. The overall length, if we were to assume I'm going to have to make a radome for this to keep it scale, I'm going to make it out of foam. So we're going to say, and then an exhaust nozzle. So when she's done, she's going to be about 75 inches long, 74, 75 inches long, which is a hair over 6 feet. So it's a pretty decent sized plane. Alright, so basically what I want to do is I want to convert this over from a puller outboard glow engine to a 90mm, a various 90mm, maybe 100mm EDF. And now these 90mm, they put out over 10 pounds of thrust. That's plenty, that's all we need. So I'm going to mount it somewhere back in here, create air ducts, air intakes right and left. So I'm going to have to basically gut out in here. I'm going to have to gut out this area of foam here. We don't need it, so we need to hollow out the center section and hollow out straight through all the way and make an air duct, exhaust duct, intake, and kind of come up with the most efficient airflow and air intake system as we can to feed the 90mm and to put cheater holes in. And I learned my hard way when I scratch built the F3H Demon. I learned you need, you know, if you buy any EDF fighter jet now, an ARF, or ready to fly, whatever, from Great Plains, Airfield, Motion RC, they all have supplementary air intakes to feed the EDFs. You'll see these ducts, they look like, they just look like these ducted doors. And alright, so let's begin here. The first thing I don't need here is this, this throttle linkage, this throttle servo linkage pipe. I don't need this here anymore, so I'm going to just rip this out. It doesn't need to be here since we're not going to use a glow. I could use this, is great because I can use this for something else. So I'm going to put that. Okay, so now I'm basically using this little heat gun here to go in here and basically gouge out this center section in here, because this is where your duct is going to be for the EDF. So I don't need this stuff. So we're breaking this stuff out of here. Alright, I had to switch cameras because my other camera died on me. Unfortunately, the battery went dead. So as you can see, we've started to hot knife all of the internal structure that we don't need out of here. I'm moving back in here, so that'll give us room so that we can mount our 90mm, which will probably be right in here somewhere. So you always want to balance out your battery position, your ESC, EDF to your CG point. You always want to balance things out so that the plane isn't either nose heavy or tail heavy. So on video 2, we'll have this all cleaned out and we'll be getting ready to mount the EDF into our target drone Mig-27 / Mig-23. As always, my friends, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. And this is the part 1 of the Goldberg Mig-27 / Mig-23 target drone restoration and modification into an EDF fighter jet. All right, part 2 coming up in a few weeks. DemonDriver here. Good to be back building with you guys. Take care.